Imagine this. It's a cold morning in early 1933. You put on your coat, walk down the street, and step into your neighborhood bank like you've done countless times before. But today, something feels different. The shades are pulled. A handwritten sign hangs crooked on the heavy oak doors, closed until further notice. Your stomach drops. You rattle the handle, but it won't budge. You press your face against the glass. Inside, the desks are empty, the lights dim. The bank, the place you trusted with your life savings, has shut its doors overnight. This wasn't just your story. It was the story of millions of Americans in the darkest days of the Great Depression. Banks weren't just institutions, they were lifelines. People trusted them with every cent they had, their mortgages, their hopes for the future. And in one brutal wave of panic, those doors slammed shut across America. Why did this happen? To understand, we need to rewind. The stock market had crashed in 1929, shattering confidence in the economy. Businesses collapsed, unemployment soared, and ordinary people became desperate. Banks, already fragile, were hit hardest when depositors, terrified of losing their money, lined up to withdraw everything at once. This was called a bank run, and it spread like wildfire. Picture it, crowds stretching around city blocks, fathers clutching savings books, mothers holding children's hands, ordinary workers praying they could get their money out before the vaults ran dry. The truth? Many never did. Because here's the harsh reality. Back then, there was no FDIC insurance, no safety net. If a bank failed, your money vanished. Generations of hard work gone in a single morning. That morning when banks shut their doors wasn't just about money. It was about trust in the system, in leaders, in the very idea of America's future. And once trust collapses, it takes more than open doors to rebuild it. This was more than an economic crisis. It was a human crisis. And for millions of Americans, that handwritten sign on a bank door marked the beginning of hunger, homelessness, and heartbreak. But behind those closed doors was something else too, a turning point, a moment that would push America to reinvent itself. The moment those bank doors shut, panic spread like fire in dry grass. Word traveled fast, neighbors whispering on porches, factory workers rushing to tell their families, newspaper headlines screaming about failures and closures. Suddenly, it wasn't just a financial problem. It became a national hysteria. In cities like Detroit, Chicago, and New York, sidewalks were packed with desperate crowds. People pressed their faces against the cold glass of banks, hoping for a sign of mercy. Some banged on the doors, begging tellers to let them in. Others shouted rumors that only made things worse. I heard the bank down the street already ran out of money. They're taking people's savings and locking them in the vault. Fear fed on fear. The rumors weren't always true, but they didn't have to be. The more people believed them, the faster they rushed to withdraw their savings. And the faster they withdrew, the quicker banks collapsed. It was a vicious circle that no one seemed able to stop. Imagine you're standing in one of those endless lines. Every second, you wonder if the teller will announce, "Sorry, we're out of cash." People clutched wads of bills to their chests, hiding them under coats as they walked home, afraid of being robbed. For many, that cash was the only thing standing between survival and starvation. And when the doors finally locked, the devastation was immediate. Thousands lost everything overnight. Some had been saving for years, for homes, for farms, for their children's education. Suddenly it was gone, vanished. The emotional toll was staggering. Fathers who could no longer feed their families stood in silence at dinner tables. Mothers wept as they watered down soup to stretch a meal for one more day. Children learned too soon what it meant to go to bed hungry. This panic wasn't just about money. It was about dignity, hope, and the future. America was supposed to be the land of opportunity. But in those years, it felt like the land of broken promises. And yet, in the middle of all this fear, people didn't give up. Some formed community kitchens to feed neighbors. Farmers traded food for services. Strangers shared what little they had. But the pressure was unbearable. Every rumor, every lost dollar, every closed door pushed America closer to the edge. Something had to give, and soon it would. Behind the headlines and the chaos in the streets, the Great Depression's harshest reality unfolded in America's kitchens, living rooms, and farms. This wasn't just a story of banks and numbers. It was a story of families on the edge of survival. Picture a father who once worked proudly in a factory. Every morning, he kissed his children goodbye, carried his lunch pail, and walked to work with purpose. But now, the factory gates are locked. He stands in long lines at the unemployment office, only to walk home empty-handed. His children look up at him, hungry, waiting for food he doesn't have. His silence at the dinner table says everything. Mothers became the anchors of survival. They stretched every penny, patched the same clothes over and over, and turned scraps into meals. Soup was thinned with water. Potatoes were fried, mashed, baked, anything to fill stomachs. In some households, mothers went hungry just so their children could eat. Children grew up faster than they should have. They sold newspapers on street corners, shined shoes for a few cents, or dropped out of school to help support their families. Playgrounds turned into fields of responsibility, and innocence was replaced with worry. And then there were the farmers. You'd think living on a farm meant security, but for many, it was worse. Falling crop prices meant they couldn't sell their harvest for enough to cover loans. Banks seized farms when debts went unpaid, leaving families homeless. Dust storms in the Midwest only deepened the tragedy, sweeping away both soil and hope. Families piled into old cars, carrying what little they owned, searching for work that didn't exist. But here's what made this generation extraordinary. They adapted. Families bartered with neighbors, bread for firewood, eggs for mending clothes. Communities organized penny auctions, where neighbors would show up to bid only a few cents for a foreclosed farm, then return it to the original owner. These acts of quiet rebellion showed that while money was scarce, human spirit was not. It wasn't easy. Some families fractured under the pressure, but others discovered resilience they never knew they had. They learned to survive with less, to endure, and to fight for another day. This period left scars, deep ones. But it also built a generation of men, women, and children who understood sacrifice, grit, and perseverance. They had lost almost everything, yet somehow found a way forward. And soon, they would hear a voice on the radio, a voice that offered not just policies, but hope. It was a winter evening in 1933 when millions of Americans tuned their radios to hear a voice that would change the course of the Great Depression. Franklin D. Roosevelt, newly elected president, spoke directly into living rooms across the nation. No speeches, no political jargon, just a calm, reassuring voice. My friends, let me tell you what we're doing to restore confidence in our banks. For many, it was the first sense of hope in years. That night, the fireside chat didn't just explain policy, it restored trust. Roosevelt spoke plainly about bank closures, emergency measures, and the steps being taken to protect Americans' money. He explained that the government would now insure deposits, so no one would have to fear losing their life savings overnight. People listened, and slowly, fear began to fade. Americans started returning to banks. Lines formed once again, but this time with purpose rather than panic. Deposits increased, and banks started reopening under government oversight. Trust, the fragile backbone of any economy, began to rebuild. But Roosevelt didn't stop there. The New Deal, a sweeping set of programs, aimed to revive the economy, create jobs, and protect the vulnerable. Public works projects built roads, bridges, and schools. Farmers received support to stabilize prices. Social Security emerged to help the elderly and unemployed. It wasn't a perfect fix, but it was a lifeline. Stories of transformation poured in. Unemployed men dug ditches in the Civilian Conservation Corps, earning food and wages. Women found work in community programs. Children could go to school instead of working full-time. Slowly, The despair of the early 1930s began to give way to determination and cautious optimism. This turning point teaches a vital lesson. In the darkest times, leadership and hope matter as much as money. One voice, one plan, one vision of recovery can inspire a nation to stand back up, even when everything seems lost. The Great Depression wasn't just a financial collapse. It was a test of faith, perseverance, and collective action. And through it, America learned that even shattered trust can be rebuilt, step by step, voice by voice, action by action. The Great Depression ended more than 90 years ago, but its lessons are timeless. It wasn't just a story of banks, stock markets, or policies. It was a story of human resilience, adaptation, and the importance of trust. First, it reminds us that no system is invincible. Markets rise and fall, banks fail, and economies can collapse faster than we imagine. But preparation matters. The Depression led to reforms like FDIC insurance, Social Security, and financial regulations that protect millions today. It teaches that planning, safeguards, and vigilance are the foundation of stability. Second, it shows the power of community and solidarity. In the hardest years, families shared food, neighbors protected each other's farms, and communities organized penny auctions to save homes. When society comes together, even the darkest times become survivable. No one survived alone, and neither will we in modern crises. Third, it proves that hope and leadership can change everything. FDR's fireside chats weren't just speeches, they were lifelines. A clear voice, honest words, and decisive action can calm panic and inspire action. This lesson resonates today. In uncertainty, leadership and communication are just as important as any policy. Finally, the Depression teaches resilience. Millions lost everything, yet they rebuilt their lives, adapted to new realities, and laid the groundwork for a stronger America. It's a story of grit, sacrifice, and the refusal to give in, even when the odds are stacked against you. We live in a world that still faces uncertainty, economic swings, global crises, and personal hardships. The Great Depression is a mirror, showing us that preparation, solidarity, hope, and resilience aren't just abstract virtues. They're survival tools. Remember this: the next time life closes a door or a bank locks its doors, history shows us that people can endure, adapt, and emerge stronger. Trust can be rebuilt. Communities can come together. And even in despair, hope can light the way forward.